morning, students. How are you? I hope you are all doing well. Today, we are going to take up the next topic for BA Part 2 students, that is, Ode to the West Wind. Dear students, you know that this is one of the best odes in the English literature. This ode was written by P.B. Shelley. He was a romantic poet. Let's begin with the introduction. And to begin with, we take up P.B. Shelley's introduction. Sorry. P.B. Shelley was born in 1792 and he died in 1822. He was a great romantic poet. He died in a drowning accident. He was scared of water and ironically, he died in a drowning accident. Shelley was a rebel. He wanted to revolutionize our society. He was also a prophet and a revolutionary. He wanted to bring about a social revolution through his poetry. And why do we call Shelley a rebel? Because he wanted to establish a kingless, a classless, and a priestless society. It means he wanted to create a utopia. Utopia is a word which means an ideal world which exists nowhere. Have you got the point? Now, Shelley was also a champion of liberty. He wanted to create a world where a lamb and a lion drink water together. There is no distinction, there is no differentiation. All are equal. Shelley is also known as a perfect singing god because of the musical quality of his poetry. Dear students, Matthew Arnold, a Victorian critic and poet, called Shelley a beautiful angel. He writes, Shelley was an ineffectual angel beating in the void, his luminous wings in vain. Let us discuss it. Shelley was an ineffectual angel. Shelley was an angel. And what is an angel? A person, a spirit who comes to us when we are in suffering and helps us out. That is not as an angel. And in that way, Shelley was an angel because he wanted to serve us, he wanted to help us. But this angel was ineffectual, meaning his efforts could not be materialized. His efforts were fruitless. Have you got the point? Myths say that angels come from the space. They come to us from space and they have large wings. With the help of these wings, they fly from here and there and they help us out in our suffering. In the same way, Shelley also wanted to come to us to help us out in suffering, and that's why he was flattering his wings. Arnold said that beating his luminous wings. He was beating means flattering his luminous means shining wings in vain means useless, without any result. The whole meaning of the quotation is that Shelley was an ineffectual angel beating in the void his luminous wings in vain. Shelley was an angel, but this angel was not effective. He wanted to come to us to help us, and that is why he was flattering his shining wings in the space, but it was fruitless, it was useless. Is that right? And why did Matthew Arnold say it? Because Shelley was a revolutionary, he was a rebel, he wanted to create a kingless, classless, and priestless society, or you may say a utopia. All is true and all is good. But was he able to establish such a society? No, not at all. And that is why he was ineffectual. Is that clear? Now, what did Keats say about Shelley? Keats once advised Shelley to fill every rip of his poetry with awe because there was too much of abstract imagery in Shelley. Is it okay? Now, dear students, Shelley was once expelled from Oxford for writing Necessity of Atheism. He was expelled from Oxford University, and at college he was called Mad Shelley because of his ideas, revolutionary ideas. Is it okay? Now we take up some important quotations of Shelley himself. Shelley says, poets are unacknowledged legislators of the world. Unacknowledged, that is, nobody accepts them, nobody acknowledges them, but they are legislators. In another quotation, he says, a poet is a nightingale who sits in darkness and sings to cheer its own solitude with sweet songs. A poet is a nightingale. Shelley says that a poet is a nightingale, and this nightingale sings only for the pleasure of itself, not for the pleasure of anybody else. In other words, Shelley says that he writes poetry to cheer his own soul. He does not want to he does not want that others he does not want others to enjoy his poetry. Poetry is not a means of entertainment or enjoy for Shelley. It was a means for revolution in society. Is that right? Now, Shelley says poetry is the record of the best and happiest moments, of the happiest and best moments. This is the romantic definition of poetry. What is poetry? Poetry is the record of the best and happiest moments, of the happiest and best minds. Is that right? Now, let us come to the poem that we are going to study. That the poem is Ode to the West Wind. Dear students, you know that this poem was published in 1820. This poem was published in 1820, and this poem was published with, uh, it was published with Prometheus Unbound. That was a lyrical drama, and this poem was published with that lyrical drama Prometheus Unbound. Now we come, this poem. Where did Shelley write this poem? Shelley wrote this poem in Italy. He was living in Florence and near the forest of Arno, and there he saw a storm in the evening, and this visualizes his imagery, and he wrote this beautiful poem, Ode to the West Wind. It was the month of April, and autumn was set in. Autumn has set in, and he wrote this beautiful poem. Then how many stanzas are there in this poem? There are 5 stanzas in this poem. This is a great piece of poetry, because in this poem we come to know that Shelley was a great optimist. He was not a pessimist. In the 5 stanzas of the poem, you find that in the first stanza, Shelley discusses the power of the wind on earth. In the second stanza, Shelley discusses the power of the earth in the sky. In the third stanza, Shelley discusses the power of the earth and the power of the wind in the ocean. And the fourth stanza, this rhythm breaks, and Shelley discusses his self-pity, or rather you may say that the note of self-pity is overplayed. In the fifth stanza, he comes out of the depression, and he becomes a great champion of optimism. He again, once again, universalizes his feelings and becomes a champion of revolution. Is that clear now? Should we begin with the first? Should we begin now? So let us see. Now we take up the first stanza, and with the first stanza we begin the poem.